Here's the thing about zombie outbreaks that nobody wants to admit. The vast majority of deaths wouldn't come from dramatic last stands or heroic combat. They'd come from unlocked doors, broken windows, and the very human instinct to run outside and see what's happening. That instinct is the first killer. Everything else, the water, the food, the escape plan, none of it matters if your location can be breached in under 60 seconds. So let's fix that problem first. Securing the immediate perimeter. The rule of threes in survival puts shelter and security before water, before food, before everything. You can survive 3 days without water and 3 weeks without food, but you've got about 3 minutes if something walks through your front door while you're asleep. That's not dramatic, that's just math, and yet the first thing most people would do in an outbreak is exactly what gets them killed. They'd open the door, they'd go to the window, they'd step outside to get a better look. Congratulations! You've just announced your position to everything within line of sight. Sit down, lock the door, and think. Now, Hollywood loves a good barricade montage. Furniture flying, nails going into boards. The reality is way more boring and way more effective. An inward opening door gets a chair wedged under the handle at a sharp angle so any force pushes the legs harder into the floor. An outward opening door gets its handle tied to the heaviest fixed object you can find, so it physically cannot be pulled open. Sliding glass door? Broomstick in the bottom track. Not cinematic, functional. But here's where people make the critical mistake. They barricade everything and turn their shelter into a coffin. At least one exit needs to be unblockable in under 60 seconds. If something breaches your outer layer, you need to be gone, not trapped behind your own furniture. Think of your security in layers. Outer barrier is your building entrance stairwell. Middle barrier is your apartment door. Inner barrier is one fortified room where you sleep, where your supplies are, where you retreat if everything else fails. Each layer buys you reaction time, not safety time. There's a difference. What nobody mentions is that your biggest early threat isn't the undead. It's the living, panicked neighbors congregating in the hallway, opportunistic looters who figured out the cops aren't coming. All of these compromise your perimeter without a single zombie being involved. Finally, your perimeter assessment isn't a one-time job. It's daily. Structural damage shifts overnight. New entry points open up when walls crack or windows shatter. What was secure on Monday is a liability by Wednesday. Check it every single day. But if you think a solid door and a braced chair are enough to keep you hidden, wait until you find out how far a single candle flame travels in a blacked-out city. Blackout mode. Here's a fun biological contradiction for you. The thing your brain craves most in a crisis is the exact thing that will get you killed. Light, warmth, visibility. Your nervous system is screaming for it, and you need to tell your nervous system to shut up. Within 48 hours of a grid failure, any visible light acts as a beacon for 2 distinct predator classes. Zombies will shamble toward stimulus, sure, but the real danger is desperate armed survivors scanning darkened streets for signs of occupation. A lit window doesn't just say someone's home, it says someone's home, and they have resources worth protecting. Tactical light discipline means momentary on only. You flash a light long enough to complete a single task, then off. Think camera flash, not lamp. One burst, task done, darkness again. But here's where most people fail completely. It's not the flashlight that betrays them. It's the tiny modern traitors they forget about. The green LED on a power strip, a smartphone screen lighting up with a notification nobody will ever read, the glow of an illuminated watch face. In a city with zero ambient light, every single one of these might as well be a flare gun. Tape them, unplug them, cover them. Now, if you do get hit with bright white light, you've just destroyed your dark adaptation for 20 to 30 minutes. The rhodopsin in your retinal cells bleaches out, and suddenly you're functionally blind in every room you were navigating just fine 3 seconds ago. The workaround is red light. Red wavelengths barely touch your night vision. Use red filters on any light source you must operate. And here's a trick that sounds paranoid, but works. If you know you're about to be exposed to brightness, cover one eye. That eye stays adapted. When the light goes away, you've still got one functional eye while the other recovers, which is, not ideal, but it beats 2 blind eyes. There's also a thermal dimension most people never consider. Other surviving humans might absolutely have night vision scopes or thermal cameras ripped from security systems. To a thermal imager, you're a bright white human-shaped blob against a cold building. Layered clothing with air gaps disrupts that clean silhouette. Position yourself near heat. Similar objects like sun-warmed concrete walls to blend into the thermal background. The psychological toll compounds fast. Prolonged darkness disrupts circadian rhythms within days. Cognition degrades. Anxiety spikes. The solution isn't to suffer in permanent blackness like some kind of apocalyptic monk. Designate safe light periods inside fully blacked out interior rooms with no exterior windows. Give your nervous system 30 minutes of dim light, then back to dark. You're fighting your own biology every second of this. Every instinct says, find light, make light, keep light. Ignore all of it. In a world this dark, the people who glow are the people who die first. But if you think controlling light is difficult, wait until you realize how far sound travels in a city with no traffic noise. Soundproofing and decoy dispersal. Here's something nobody thinks about until it's too late. When the grid goes down and the sirens quit, cities get quiet. Not peaceful quiet, wrong quiet, the kind where a dropped pan echoes off concrete for half a block. Suddenly, you're the loudest thing in the neighborhood. Human hearing peaks between 2,000 and 5,000 hertz. That's exactly where speech sits. Where metal clinks against metal, where a buckle taps a doorframe, where a half-empty water bottle sloshes in your bag. Every sound you make lives in the frequency range, ears are literally designed to detect. In a dead silent city, your normal indoor conversation carries further than you'd ever believe. So, you do a noise inventory, put on all your gear, everything you'd carry if you had to move and jump. Anything that rattles gets padded, tied down, or removed. Fill water containers completely, because a half-full bottle is a maraca. Wrap metal buckles in cloth. Secure loose straps. If your zipper pull taps when you walk, tape it. This sounds obsessive. It's the difference between moving undetected and announcing yourself to everything within 200 meters. Inside your shelter, seal air gaps. Where air flows, sound flows. Weather stripping around door frames, door sweeps along the bottom, rolled blankets against thresholds. A single unsealed gap under a door lets your conversation leak into a hallway, down a stairwell, and out into the street. Hang heavy blankets over interior doors and windows. Lay rugs with padding to kill footstep transmission below. None of this requires special materials. It requires attention. But here's where it gets interesting. Some noise is unavoidable, which means you need decoy dispersal, and biology explains why it works. Predator-prey research shows threats preferentially track targets that are large, glossy, and moving in predictable paths. The takeaway: irregular, low-contrast movement and cover is drastically safer than bold linear runs across open ground. You want to be the sardine, not the lure. Your decoy should be the opposite of you. Obvious, predictable, a timed falling object, a bottle tossed to shatter at distance. The goal isn't elaborate, it's directional. You're shaping where attention goes. But here's the critical part. You only deploy a decoy from a position with a clear escape route that does not cross the lure's path. If you throw a bottle north and your exit is also north, congratulations. You've funneled threats directly into your escape corridor. One more thing nobody mentions. Enforced silence breaks people. Prolonged suppression of speech and emotional expression accelerates isolation stress fast. Days of whispering sound tactical until someone snaps and screams over nothing, which is, not ideal for noise discipline. The fix is designated communication periods in your most soundproofed room. Brief check-ins. Enough connection to keep the psychological pressure valve from blowing entirely. But if you think controlling sound is difficult, wait until you try harvesting clean water without making a single splash. Silently harvesting clean water. Here's something nobody thinks about until it's too late. Dehydration doesn't start with collapse. It starts with stupidity. You lose 2% of your body water and your decision-making degrades. Your reaction time slows. Your ability to assess threats drops off a cliff. In a world where one bad call gets you eaten, your brain is a survival resource, and water is what keeps it running. So, you need clean water. But here's the problem most people don't anticipate. The most reliable way to purify water is also the most dangerous thing you can do. Boiling works. 1 minute at a rolling boil at sea level, 3 minutes above 6,500 feet, and you've killed bacteria, viruses, protozoa, all of it. Gold standard. But boiling means fire. Fire means smoke. Smoke means light at night, noise from clinking pots, and a visible column during the day that basically says, hey, living humans over here, come get us. The safest purification method is also a giant signal flare, which is, not ideal. So the real skill is knowing your source hierarchy. Most people's first instinct is to run to a river or creek. Turns out, no. Your first targets are contained sources that haven't been exposed to the open environment. Water heaters hold 30 to 80 gallons of pre-treated water just sitting there in every house. Rooftop tanks in apartment buildings. Depressurizing plumbing systems by opening the lowest tap and letting gravity drain whatever's left in the pipes. These sources are indoors, quiet to access, and initially clean. Moving water upstream of population centers comes second. Stagnant pools are dead last. When boiling is too risky, you go chemical. Household bleach, unscented 8 drops per gallon of clear water, 16 if it's cloudy. Stir it. Wait 30 minutes. Completely silent. No flame, no smoke, no light signature. You can do this in total darkness in a sealed room and nobody outside will ever know. UV pens work too if you've got battery power and pre-filtered water, but bleach is the workhorse because it's everywhere and it weighs nothing. For filtration, the numbers matter. A portable microfilter rated at 0.3 microns or smaller handles bacteria and protozoa, but if you're worried about viruses and you should be near corpse-contaminated water, you need ultrafiltration at 0.01 microns. Most camping filters don't hit that threshold. Know what your gear actually removes before you trust your life to it. One thing no treatment method fixes: chemical and radiological contamination. Water downstream of industrial plants, near derailed tankers, in flooded factory zones. That water is permanently off limits. Boil it all day long, the heavy metals and toxins stay right where they are. Map those zones early and treat them as hard boundaries. The whole game here is silence. Fill containers completely so they don't slosh. Pad metal bottles so they don't clank in your pack. Harvest from internal plumbing via stairwells, rather than exposed street-level sources. Every step of the process should be invisible and inaudible. But if you think water logistics are tricky, wait until you try solving the calorie problem without cooking anything. The low-cook caloric strategy. Every zombie movie has the same scene. Survivors around a roaring campfire, passing cans of food, laughing, maybe grilling something. It looks great. It's also a fantastic way to die. That fire is a beacon. That smell travels. And those survivors just told every threat within a half-mile radius exactly where dinner is being served. The reality of eating during a zombie outbreak is cold-canned tuna in the dark. It's counting tablespoons of peanut butter by flashlight. It's splitting an energy bar 3 ways and pretending that counts as lunch. Here's the thing most people don't understand about food in survival situations. You're not going to starve in 7 days. Adults can survive 45 to 61 days on water alone. But cognitive and physical impairment from energy deficits starts way before starvation becomes the issue. Slower reaction times, worse decision-making, reduced immune function. In an environment where one bad call gets you killed, a little sluggish is not acceptable. Your body also actively fights you. The moment you start eating less, your metabolism downshifts through adaptive thermogenesis, reducing energy expenditure by roughly 5.8 calories per day for each pound of body weight you lose. Your body is basically saying, "Oh, we're doing this now. Fine, I'll burn less." The clock is just ticking slightly slower. So, what do you actually eat? Anything calorie-dense that requires zero cooking. Canned meats, nut butters, energy bars, oats, and beans. All edible straight from the container. Oatmeal can be cold-soaked with safe water. You just add water, wait, and eat something with the texture of wet cement. Delicious? No. Keeping you alive and quiet? Absolutely. Your refrigerator, assuming the power just went out, keeps food safe for about 4 hours unopened. A full freezer buys you 48 hours. After that, anything perishable becomes a gamble without thorough cooking, which brings us back to the fire problem. Eat your perishables first. When scavenging, you want maximum calories and minimum weight. Peanut butter is basically survival gold. A single jar contains roughly 2,600 calories and enough protein to matter. You can carry that in one hand. Compare that to hauling bags of rice you'd need to boil for 20 minutes over a fire that announces your position to everything within earshot. On the protein side, you need approximately 0.36 grams per pound of body weight daily as a bare minimum. For a 140-pound person, that's about 50 grams. That's not building muscle. That's maintaining immunity, wound healing, and keeping your existing muscle from being consumed by your own metabolism. Skip protein consistently, and your body starts eating itself for fuel, which is, not ideal. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Rationing in a stressed group is a psychological minefield. People under threat hoard. They binge when supplies appear. They resent anyone who seems to be getting more. The fix is almost stupidly simple. Explicit, daily ration plans with transparent group discussion. Uncertainty breeds panic. Certainty, even when the news is bad, breeds cooperation. You're not trying to eat well. You're trying to eat enough to stay sharp, stay quiet, and stay alive. Cold beans by flashlight isn't a failure. It's a strategy. But if rationing your calories feels grim, wait until you realize that half the locations you'd scavenge are already picked clean, contaminated, or surrounded by things that want to eat you instead. Mapping dead zones. Most people think resource mapping means finding where the good stuff is. Marking pharmacies, grocery stores, water sources, gas stations. But the real value of a survival map isn't the green zones. It's the red ones. Knowing where resources have been stripped clean or contaminated beyond use saves you from burning irreplaceable calories on scavenging trips that were dead on arrival. Here's the thing. Infrastructure failures cascade. The moment a water treatment plant loses power, every pipe, hydrant, and fountain connected to that system becomes suspect. That's not one bad tap. That's potentially an entire district's worth of water you can no longer trust. And unlike food scarcity, which you can see when shelves are empty, water contamination is invisible. You won't know it's killing you until 3 days later when you're doubled over with dysentery and too weak to move. Chemical contamination is worse because it's permanent. An industrial fire, an overturned fuel tanker, a warehouse full of agricultural chemicals burning unchecked. Any of these can poison a neighborhood's water supply for months. And in urban environments, all that asphalt and concrete acts like a funnel. Rainwater carries every contaminant directly into drains without natural soil filtration. Mark the industrial corridors, the chemical storage facilities, the fuel depots, and draw generous contamination radii around anything burning or breached. But a survival map isn't just about water and food. It's a security overlay. Mark long sight lines where you can spot threats from 200 meters out, and mark the opposite. Tight geometry, blind corners, overpasses with no visibility underneath. That's ambush country. Transportation hubs deserve special attention because they were designed to move crowds efficiently, which means they also funnel and compress crowds efficiently. In the wrong conditions, a subway station isn't a transit option. It's a kill box. Then there are dynamic nodes, former shelters, aid distribution points, community gathering spots. These require periodic reassessment because their status changes faster than anything else on your map. The church handing out water on day 2 might be a stripped shell by day 5. The school gymnasium that served as an emergency shelter might now house 300 infected people with no ventilation. Yesterday's safe destination is today's red zone. Mark it, date it, check it again before you ever approach it twice. Here's an angle nobody considers. Different people in your group perceive danger differently in the same spaces. A narrow alley between 2 buildings might register as useful shortcut to one person and assault corridor to another. And that second instinct isn't paranoia. It's pattern recognition shaped by different lived experience. If you're mapping with a group, incorporate everyone's read on the terrain. The fears you dismiss might be the ones that save you. Now, as your map fills out over the first week, a pattern emerges. The green zones shrink, the red zones expand. Contaminated water, stripped stores, blocked routes, rising threat density. At some point, the math becomes unavoidable. If every viable resource within 2 kilometers is exhausted or poisoned, staying isn't shelter anymore. It's a siege. Your map becomes the evidence that either justifies holding position or forces the hardest decision of the week. But if you think mapping your environment is stressful, wait until you're staring at an infected wound with no hospital within reach and trying to remember whether red streaks spreading from a cut means you have hours or days. First aid infection protocol. Here's the irony nobody talks about. In every zombie movie, every game, every show, the bite is the thing. Everyone's terrified of the fictional pathogen. Meanwhile, the actual bacteria living in a dirty scratch from a rusty fence post is sitting there like, hey, I'm gonna kill you in 72 hours, but sure, keep worrying about the made-up virus. Because in a post-collapse environment, without hospitals, without antibiotics, without sterile anything, the majority of deaths won't come from dramatic last stands. They'll come from infected cuts, puncture wounds, burns that got dirty. The boring stuff nobody makes movies about because watching someone die of sepsis over 3 days isn't exactly cinematic. But it is extremely real. Bleeding is priority 1. Direct, firm pressure on the wound, not a stack of gauze meant to soak up blood like a sponge. Your job is to keep blood inside the body. If pressure fails, an improvised tourniquet placed 3 to 5 centimeters from the wound margins can save a life. Never over a joint. Tighten until bleeding stops and accept that it's going to hurt. A living person in pain beats a comfortable corpse. Once bleeding is controlled, you clean, aggressively. Large volumes of clean water flush through the wound, removing debris, dirt, bacteria. The volume matters more than the solution. You're mechanically washing out the organisms that want to colonize that tissue. Now here's where most people mess up. Your instinct is to close the wound, bandage it tight, seal it up, move on. But high-risk wounds, specifically punctures, bites, and anything on the hands or feet, should be left open. Closing a contaminated wound traps bacteria in a warm, moist environment and essentially builds them a luxury apartment. It looks worse. It feels wrong. Do it anyway. And this is where the rabies analogy becomes genuinely useful. Rabies is nearly 100% fatal once symptoms appear. Full stop. But immediate mechanical wound cleansing with soap and water alone significantly reduces infection risk even without the vaccine. The physical act of flushing pathogens out before they establish themselves is powerful enough to meaningfully change outcomes against one of the deadliest viruses on the planet. Apply that logic to every wound in a collapse scenario. Clean like your life depends on it, because it does. Now, sepsis. The part that should genuinely frighten you more than any zombie. Sepsis is what happens when a local infection goes systemic. Your immune response spirals out of control and attacks your own organs. Fever, rapid breathing, fast heart rate, confusion, reduced urine output. Mortality sits at 30 to 40% even with a modern ICU. Without any of that, you're looking at hours, not days. Hours. From confused and feverish to organ failure to dead, and it started from a scratch you didn't clean on day 2 because you were busy. The psychological problem is real. Your brain under stress prioritizes visible, immediate threats. The zombie outside the door gets full attention. The small cut on your forearm from climbing through a broken window Your stress response literally deprioritizes it. This cognitive bias will kill you if you don't consciously override it. Every injury triggers the same sequence. Clean, irrigate, assess depth and contamination, decide open or closed, monitor daily, escalate at the first sign of spreading redness, warmth, or systemic symptoms. No exceptions. No, it's fine. No, I'll deal with it later. But if you think infections are the scariest slow killer in your environment, wait until you have to decide whether your entire shelter has become one. The strategic evacuation trigger. The moment you decide whether to stay put or hit the road is the biggest call you'll make in that first week. Without clear, predefined criteria, people tend to either cling too long out of habit, attachment, or outright denial, or they bolt impulsively at the first sign of trouble. And both roads lead straight to disaster. Here's where emergency hospital evacuation frameworks actually offer a surprisingly perfect blueprint for your household decision-making. They assess structural integrity, perimeter security, water and food availability, and the shifting threat landscape, each against explicit thresholds. If your shelter's floors start sagging or walls crack, that's a red flag. If doors and windows keep getting compromised, or, hostile humans have zeroed in, that's another. Then there's resources. Water that's permanently contaminated, food stores below the point of no resupply, or if critical meds like insulin or seizure drugs run out, your clock is ticking. You don't get to negotiate with biology on that one. Infrastructure interdependencies make this even more complex. Power failure doesn't just mean no lights. It often cascades into water treatment shutdowns, fuel shortages, and dead communication lines. If grid power hasn't snapped back by day 7, assume you're in a long-term blackout scenario. That's a hard deadline to factor into your split. And once water pressure drops to 0, even a structurally sound building becomes unlivable within days. But it's not just whether to evacuate, it's when and how. The timing matters enormously. Ditching your shelter at pre-dawn keeps you less visible but keeps navigation easier with the gray light working in your favor. Your escape routes should favor quiet secondary roads, paths on foot with cover and detours, avoid major highways jammed with stalled vehicles, panicked crowds, and of course, zombies. If you haven't scouted at least 2 alternate routes before day 7, you're already behind. Then comes execution. This is no time for last-minute panic packing. Your go bags should be ready, loaded for at least 72 hours, with essentials like water purification, food, first aid, and tools. Everyone must know their role. Scouts, carriers, protectors. Those with limited mobility get assigned helpers or transport. Hesitation at the door could mean the difference between life and death. Practice the departure sequence before you need it. Even one dry run cuts your exit time in half. Where you go matters just as much as where you leave. Rural areas often have lower population density and fewer predators, which can be safer. But remote locations also bring isolation and resource scarcity challenges. Your evacuation destination must be as carefully chosen as the moment you pull the trigger. A cabin with no water source is just a prettier coffin. Emotionally, this decision carries enormous weight. Leaving home means confronting grief, fear of the unknown, and severing bonds of place attachment. But reality won't wait for you to get over it. Your shelter could become a death trap as the map of available resources shrinks every day. By day 7, if you haven't already been forced out by immediate danger, you will have either reaffirmed your location as viable for the medium term or activated a planned path toward somewhere sustainable. This strategic evacuation trigger is the hard-earned clarity you need to survive beyond that brutal first week. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.